Welcome to the next episode of Real Stories Leadership Series. For the Canadian real estate industry, I'm your host, Micheline Bentley from Matrix360, and we're excited to collaborate with Informa Canada today to deliver a platform for leaders and share their experiences. The intent of our dialogue today is to engage with business leaders as they share their insights and wisdom. Before we commence, a little tidbit about Matrix360. We're a talent management and workplace advisory platform that bridges the human experience with business innovation. It's with great privilege and responsibility that we partner and advocate for people in our industry. Today we're here at the Global Property Market Conference in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and we're honored to be joined by Aikta Jain, the Director of Capital Advisory based in New York City with CBRE Capital Advisors, Inc. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We certainly appreciate it. We know it's been a long day. You've already been on a panel and have to fly back and all those things that you have to do. So to kick off the conversation today, we're going to talk a little bit about your own personal experience as a leader. Can you share a little bit about what you do currently and why it matters to you?
Sure. So thanks again for having me. I am responsible for raising capital here in North America, and I focus on European managers, so European private equity real estate managers. I absolutely love it. And partly I love it because we find these fantastic managers in Europe that a North American, US investor or Canadian, they just don't have access to them. Mm-hmm. So we can provide these opportunities and have them partner. And it's just really fulfilling, actually.
That's great. And so are you traveling quite a bit or? Yeah.
Yes, and I was just thinking, I don't have global entry. What's wrong with me? How can I not have that? I'm traveling all the time. I split my time between London and New York, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at your career journey and kind of leading up into this point where you're at now. So when you were starting off your career, what did your vision look like for the future?
Definitely not doing real estate, actually.
Okay.
So I started off my career with Boston Consulting Group and saw myself in the development world, like working for the World Bank or something. And somewhere across the journey between business school and different opportunities, I ended up in real estate. And I've been in it for about 10 years. And I guess you just sort of follow your heart. And I sort of just went for the next opportunity, didn't think where it's going to be in 5 years. And I just ended up in a place where I'm very happy now.
That's fantastic.
But it's been a journey.
Yes. Well, I'm sure we're going to learn more about that. Was there a moment in your life where you realized that I'm now a leader? I'm in a position where I have responsibilities and people look up to me.
You know, that's a good question because I've had so many people reach out to me in the last couple of years to mentor them. Mm-hmm. But I don't really consider myself like as a leader. I think it's more just I'm in a leadership position and I have responsibilities and I'm aware of that. But just, there wasn't a moment in time where I'm like, oh, now I've made it. I'm a leader.
Right.
I think it's a complete journey and you have to embrace change and keep doing what's necessary. I don't think I want to be comfortable and be like, I've reached the point. I want to keep pushing myself.
You don't want to be complacent. Was there a time when you realized that you had the power to make a change? You mentioned people coming to you for help and mentorship. Was there a moment where you're like, aha?
Yeah, definitely. So I spoke at, I think it was called the Ford Women's Foundation.
Okay.
This was right after business school, and there was a drop, in business school, there are not as many women as men, of course, and there was a little bit of a drop in applications coming in from women. And I spoke at this conference and advised a bunch of women on why business school and education and next steps are important, because a lot of people start pursuing a family and, they don't end up going for that next position. And I actually had a few women write to me after that, and they just said, they really liked my advice, ended up pursuing a career, and they're managing the work life just fine, the work life balance, and I think that's when I realized you can actually make a difference.
Like you inspired people to kind of think about it differently.
I think so.
Can you recall maybe something that you had to do, a job or a project, maybe even a volunteering experience, where in retrospect, it had a much more positive impact on kind of like who you are today?
That's a good question. I think from a volunteer perspective, I'm an animal activist, and I remember when I first moved to New York, my boyfriend at that time hated this, but I had these leaflets of lobsters have feelings.
Yes,
You know, I know. And I lived in Chinatown where there were tons of lobster tanks everywhere. So I took it upon myself to actually go put these little pamphlets of lobsters have feelings in these different coffee shops or tea shops around Chinatown. Mortifying for my friends and boyfriend, but it really made me feel like I was making a difference because even if it's, and I know it's a very personal thing for me, but I felt even if a few people could see the lobsters as beyond just, throwing them in these frying pans and really think about what they're doing, or if it made a difference even to a couple of people in the way they thought about food and how they source food and what they did with food before putting it in their body, I thought it would be incredible, and it actually made a difference. And I was asked to be in an event, then I was asked to be in kind of a movie for animals.
Really?
You
You have a whole other career.
Completely, exactly, yeah. The wrong career, yeah.
Well, maybe that can merge where you're the concept of doing something little and making a bigger difference. Maybe that's transcended. Is there a memorable or impactful lesson that you've learned throughout your journey that you can share with us today? I guess more in the context of your career.
I think it's about being authentic. So I've lived on 3 continents, open to a 4th.
Wow.
I've always just tried. So my dad used to say the only difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that word extra. So doing that little bit extra and putting yourself in situations that are not your comfort zone. I've tried to do that quite a bit. So say if I don't like a particular thing, say I don't like public speaking, I'll still put myself out there and do it, because I think it's those little extra things that give you more courage and believe in yourself. So I've tried to really focus on that. Just even if it's not necessary, even if it's not needed, I just try to do that.
Be open to trying new things.
And also it's not just in the, it's not just around work, even in like personal life or with friends. Sometimes you're so tired and you're like, no, I'm not going to do this, but a friend needs you and you're like, okay, you know what, I'll go get a drink with you and listen to your day. And
right.
I don't know, it's just really...
Making the extra effort is what makes the difference.
I think, for me.
Let's talk about mentorship for a moment. Is there someone that you've looked to sort of professionally and maybe also personally in conjunction for guidance and leadership and advice as you've progressed throughout your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So in one of my first jobs, I had this guy, Mark Joyner, at Boston Consulting Group. He's English, and he went on to actually become the CFO of National Australian Banks. He moved to Australia. He was just so smart. And it's not an advert for him, he's retired now. But he was really smart, and he just really inspired me. The whole extra thing, the whole, believing in yourself, having the courage. Because I think when you're younger, you're so impressionable. You just come out of university and you look for external validation. I still do sometimes, but I definitely did in my 20s. And I think he taught me to really listen to your gut feeling and really be authentic to yourself and what's important to you, and not just be like in this herd mentality. Right. Everyone wants to do tech in 2000, go do tech. I mean, if you're not interested in technology, don't do it, right? So it's kind of, he's really been helpful. And sometimes when I find myself chasing too many things or being overwhelmed, I go back to what he said and just kind of being true to yourself and what it is that you...
It's a great point. I think it's so valid in whatever you're doing, whatever career, to kind of tap back into yourself and have a checkpoint rather than getting lost.
It can happen, right?
Yeah, it does. And you mentioned herd mentality, and it's some industries like real estate. There's a lot going on all the time. Reflecting on your career, are there any factors that you've noticed that affected employees in the workplace as you see it today?
You know what? I think inclusiveness is really important. Okay. I feel like it depends. There's some, like my office in London, for example, is just an open floor plan, and we all just, hang out, talk. It's just a different camaraderie. And in New York, it's the same, but quite often I find if the leader has their door closed, or you sort of don't feel as part of the team, you're not as included, you're just seen as you're an analyst, you're seen as a workhorse. I don't think that's a very good work environment. I think like having the collaboration and feeling like you're heard,
Yeah.
whether you're an analyst or a senior MD,
Right.
I think that really makes for a more enthusiastic and passionate environment. Little things like something that makes my work really special is, people bring in donuts on Fridays or bagels, and we get around, and it's really
the
nice.
Human element.
Yeah, it's really nice. So I think I would just based on my experience, I think having that inclusiveness, feeling like you're heard, you're part of a team, I think that makes a difference.
We're going to switch gears for a second. I just want to share some interesting information, and you may or may not already know this, but according to the latest Stats Canada census report, 82% of the population live in large and medium-sized centers across the country, and also one of the largest G7 nations. According to the 2016 Matrix Canadian Real Estate Diversity Workplace Survey, in Ontario, over 52% of the population in urban centres are female, and yet less than 34% are in leadership roles. In Ontario, between 35 and 54% of the working population in urban centres identify as visible minorities, so people of color, different ethnic backgrounds, etc. Yet less than 25% of them are in leadership positions.
Not surprised.
So considering this information, what are some of the challenges that you've actually witnessed over the course of your career that may affect these groups, just identified women, racialized groups regarding their access to opportunity and advancement in leadership?
Okay, I could spend probably hours talking about that, but to condense that's a really hard topic, right? These issues with gender inequality. One of the surveys we had in business school is that women are paid less than men for the same job, partly because we tend to not negotiate as much, are not as outspoken. I think society in general, from a leadership perspective, it's hard because when women are very outspoken, they get a different reputation than like when a man is super outspoken. So I think there are definitely cultural barriers that one has to break through. So I think that accounts for why sometimes women are not in as many leadership positions. Also, there's a lot of demand from your time. Like I've always been in banking or consulting. So there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of client dinners. There's a lot of like weekend work that goes into it.
Yeah.
And quite often, if you don't have a supporting partner who's willing to take care, I'm not married, but if I was, I would expect, and I had children, then I would expect my partner to also help out.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, I find that with my friends, their wives that are brilliant and super smart, and they just stop working because then the man is in the leadership position. He's a partner at a law firm or at a consulting firm, and someone has to take care of the kids because the travel and the sort of demands that our industry makes upon us can get a little bit challenging. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely encompassing a lot of those areas. What course of action would you recommend to other leaders who are interested in really creating more of an inclusive environment, as you were saying, in their companies and kind of the spaces that they govern?
I think having flexibility in the workplace is huge. I think even with millennials, if you look at how they want to work, what they want to do, having the ability to say work from home, or having the ability to go home and take care of a few things and then log back onto your computer, having the ability to say, you know what, I spend the whole weekend traveling, I'm not coming in on Monday. So having like the companies working with each employee to tailor some sort of what works for both people, I think not only helps include more people, but I think it's actually beneficial for the company in the end because you're more loyal, you're more enthusiastic.
Creating
you're
a
not just
culture that's encompassing of-
and you're not just like, oh, it's 5:00, I have to go at 6:00. It's more like, okay, I'm gonna go do this, and then I'm gonna come back and
do it
log
all.
on. Yeah, and actually, I think it's empowering. So creating that sort of flexible work culture, I think, would be super important.
When you think about the kind of footprint you want to leave as a legacy, as a leader, what would you say you would want your legacy to be?
I think I would just want to be seen as someone authentic, that was inspirational and approachable. So someone people could come to speak
Yeah.
to. But in the end, I think I would like to see more women in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
It's a lot of men.
Yeah, we were
So
talking about that earlier.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You just look around; it's pretty much all suits. So I think if I can help, have more women interested in the industry, take more leadership roles, that would be really good. Because I think it's good to have diversity in the workplace.
Yes.
And having that is also very useful for different viewpoints.
Yes.
So yeah, I think something like that.
Well, thank you so much for engaging with us in this conversation. Really appreciated your insight. On behalf of Matrix360 and Informa Canada, we appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective and experiences with us today. We know you've got to get back to New York. If you'd like to learn more about Matrix360 or Informa Canada, please check us out on our website. Thanks again. It's a pleasure.